guys, in today's video we're going to be checking out the Mattel DC Comics Multiverse. This is the Collect and Connect Clayface wave, and this is Green Lantern member Jessica Cruz. Now, before we have a look at all the things that come included with Jessica Cruz, let's figure out first how tall the figure stands. She's a little bit shorter than the two other figures that we've looked at. She stands roughly at 6¼ inches in height. Before we have a look at all of her accessories, we're making some considerable progress with our Collect and Connect Clayface. Now we can add a couple of stumpy, muddy feet, muddy boots to Clayface. We'll go ahead and grab where we've left off so far, and we'll grab the legs. Now, just before I put them in the past, I have put figure legs in the wrong way, so I'm just kind of looking, making sure. I'm going to assume that this is the outer area of the foot because it slightly slopes and arches its way inward. One could almost use the exact same argument for the other side. We're just going to go ahead and pick these, and we're going to stick with them. I'm going to plug these into place, like so. Luckily, he does have some nice ankle rocking articulation. We can go ahead and do that on the other side. And nice towering Clayface. He's really getting big. The only thing we need to do now is just add 2 arms. That's going to come with 2 other figures. We're going to have ourselves a finished Clayface. Move that off to the side. Now let's have a look at all the other things that she comes included with. For starters, she comes with a Green Lantern lantern. I'm certain it's carried its way from a DC Universe wave, one of the many, many different Green Lantern Corps members that would have come with the lantern. I'm sure this is the same lantern, although I don't remember it being painted in the interior section of the lantern, so maybe they've done a little extra when it comes to Jessica's here. It can be held really only in one of her hands. The other hand is closed shut. However, it does sport a Green Lantern ring, which luckily is not just a blob of paint, rather instead it's actually a sculpted Green Lantern logo. Like I said, it can fit into her one hand, her one and only hand for holding the lantern, and it stays relatively well in her hands. If you're asking yourself what is all this extra stuff happening over here, she also comes with all these Green Lantern sort of electricity pieces. They are of an extremely soft plastic. Why did you say that with such a sigh? The reason why I said that with such a sigh, getting it out of packaging, I ripped one of them. I mean, you can barely see where I ripped it. It's not like a very obvious, visible discolored plastic, but it rips extremely easy. So be very cautious. The more you know. Be careful taking these out of packaging because they actually got the little clear plastic straps across them. Don't just pull the piece out. I clipped the top and I thought I clipped completely the bottom ones, and when I pulled it out, not this one specifically, but this one here did rip in the process. Oh, scutterbug. They seem to range in colors. The longer pieces seem to be more of a darker green than the shorters. The shorter ones seem a little bit slightly more yellow. The instructions really don't indicate specifically where the electricity can go, but I suppose one could gauge by the shape of it. Like that looks like it would curve around a foot, for example. So that's, gosh darn it, that's what I'm gonna do with it. So I can wrap it around the leg and kind of just wrap it around the feet like so. If you want to go that route, I mean, it does look pretty cool, especially the fact that it's against the backdrop of an otherwise relatively dark costumed character. I'm also thinking, too, there's mileage to be had for these pieces. You could probably make use of them as well for, like, a Swamp Thing figure. So if you have a Swamp Thing kicking around, perhaps maybe like the Signature Collection, or that one we just recently did a throwback on not too long ago, you could easily fit. I say easily. I mean, I have yet to try it, you could easily fit maybe perhaps those around Swamp Thing. I'm doing a terrible job of wrapping these around, but you get the idea. They just kind of wrap around her leg. If they wrap elsewhere, and you think that they wrap elsewhere, congratulations. But we'll go ahead and take these arm pieces. I will give credit where credit is due. At the very least, Mattel didn't just simply phone it in. What do you mean by that? Well, they could have also just gone ahead and used, say for example, the red and blue Superman electricity, which we've seen with Flash releases. Always have gotten that figure, those figures as accessories included with other pieces. I'm glad at the very least that they tried something different. It's not one of the more successfuls, as the plastic, as you could probably see, is extremely soft. I'm probably ham-handing this a little bit more than what I should. If you spent a little more time, I mean, you can kind of see right there, there's a real definitive smooth section here. My guess that would fit around the leg. So you can kind of just go from that and, like I said, just kind of wrap it around her. I've probably spent like the last 15 minutes doing this, but just do something with it just to show you guys that, yeah, you can fit it around the figure with varying degrees of success. I suppose it probably would fit better on, yeah, on this side here. Oh, you could also use this on Poison Ivy as well. There we go. That one actually fits a little bit better doing it this way. You could use it with Poison Ivy. It doesn't really so much look like electricity as it looks more like vines, in my honest opinion. There's a couple things you could do with that. 15 minutes later. As for the figure itself, well, how do I feel about this particular figure? It's about on par with what I would expect from a Mattel release, but by no means do I think it's a perfect looking figure. Paint is generally pretty good. If we look at the head sculpt, I do like that she's got a little bit of a smirk happening right there. Hair has the problem that hair generally tends to have when it comes to these particular figures, Marvel Legends and DC Multiverse figures. I'm looking in your direction. When they sculpt hair with a curl, where it slightly sticks out, I suppose, there's always this awkward gap in between the hair and where the torso should be. I know you're thinking to yourself, well, why don't you just push the hair down so it sits flush with the torso? You could, but then the head seems to sit higher up than where I would prefer it myself. I'd rather have the head slightly more angled down, like that. But then you got that big gap. I suppose the gap is not a deal breaker, but it's something I want to just mention. The outfit is rather on a dark level of green. I just want to bring in the packaging here. There's the packaging for what we got with Jessica Cruz. Let me just close up the flaps here. A few somewhat behind the scenes, what happens here. That's how you open a box? Yeah, I just cut the tape on the side. The reason why I brought the box into play here is because I really love the coloring here. Most of the figures that we've looked at, and by most, we've only looked at 3, this is technically the 3rd figure, but all the other figures seem to stay somewhat consistent with the coloring of the figure that's depicted on the outside of the packaging here. Jessica Cruz, unfortunately, goes slightly more the darker route, as I guess she is closer to more the Multiverse and the Universe Green Lantern figures that tend to go dark green. I really love this color green, though. So, picking this figure up, obviously I'm picking it up more so for the Clayface. Picking this figure up, I look at this, and I look at this, and the first thing I think of, DC Collectibles could have done that figure like this, even with the slightly translucent plastic overlaying over top of the eyes. Mattel, you're kind of getting a scaled down version of it, and it's to be expected of what you're really going to get when you get this particular figure. So the coloring is not quite the vibrant light green color. Instead, we're kind of getting just a really dark muted green. And also, like the areas around the eye could have been done with translucent plastic. That's what DC Collectibles would have done. Mattel ultimately just paints it on. Paints it on, and it just looks more like a tattoo than it does anything else. Now, I'm not going to go comparing apples to oranges here. DC Collectibles, I consider to be a superior company when it comes to releasing plastic figures. When you get those figures, you kind of know what you're going to expect. When you get Mattel figures, you kind of know what you're going to expect. So, pulling the reins back a little bit, pulling the reins back, and looking at solely as a Mattel figure, even though it's not really the type of figure I would have wanted, based on that packaging, the head sculpt's pretty. Okay, let's list some positives. You know, instead of just put downs, how about some put ups? Well, some put ups, the head sculpt is pretty good. To the testament of Mattel, they panel outline the areas of the white eyes, so they do stand out, and very cleanly done. She has a little bit of a smirk, so it's not a neutral, I'm half asleep sort of look. The pigmentation on her face is nice and clean. I'm not crazy about the way that they just painted on the Green Lantern logo, but at the very least, they used a metallic glitter paint. That's another put-up. To do put-downs for the rest of this video. Dark green aside, though I'm not crazy about the fact that the green is so dark, I have to admit that it has been applied relatively clean. The Green Lantern logo, as well as the striping down the side, as well as really the greens on the sides of the figure, are all very nicely executed here. The gloves could be of one area of disaster, as well as the boots. The boots get a slightly more dirty look than the gloves do. Clearly the glove and the boots have been painted over top of the existing black plastic. So what you expect normally would be areas and pockets in which you could probably see the black plastic underneath, that the paint hasn't been the most executed when it comes to the way it was applied. But no, I think the boots are relatively good. I think the gloves fare a little bit better for how well it was applied. You get a little bit of something on the side. Other than that, not too terrible. I also I do like the contrast that they put a black sole on an otherwise white boot. You don't tend to get a lot of that. You normally would have just simply given us all white. You know, white on the white undersoles as well. Peg holes on the undersides of her feet too. There's the back of the figure. She has a little bit of additional blue that's been added to the hair. Other than that, it's primarily just a dark black. Okay, so let's go through her posability. Her head rotates all the way around. Despite the fact that there is that gap, I guess the gap, to its credit, allows the figure to get a much more bigger range of motion than a figure's, you know, where the hair was closer to the torso. So that's probably why they left as big of a gap as they did between the hair and the torso, just so you had extra mileage when rotating the head. Arms hinge outward. You can also, whoa! You can also rotate the torso all the way around. Let's correct her head there. Rotate the arms all the way around. Hinge outward. Rotate the forearms. Rotate the hands. Hinge the hands as well. Upper torso ball joint, which we were having some fun with just a second ago. Ball joint legs. How far could you get the figure's legs to split? Let's see here. I'm spending so much time doing this. Why are you even doing this? I just saw somebody else do it. I thought, I'll do it myself. The legs could split to about there, and you could get the figure to still relatively stand. Maybe not so much. We'll just skip that. We'll skip that part. We won't. We'll leave it. We'll leave it to them. Double hinge on the knee. Double hinge happening on the knee. And we've also got the hinge on the foot, which the paint is a little on the stiffer side here on this particular foot than on this foot here. And going back, she does have the peg holes on the undersides of her feet. I can't say necessarily I hate this figure. I don't actually hate it at all. I think it's just simply a case that another company, here I go again, apples to oranges, my friend, apples to oranges, another company I feel could have done it just a little bit better. with more time on my hands to actually do this right. It's got the electricity here for final looks. I think in a better placement around the legs and the arms is kind of where I think the electricity was supposed to go around Jessica Cruz. It's a nice effect. I don't feel it looks as much like the energy electricity coming from the Green Lantern ring. Instead, it kind of just looks more like vines, which leads myself to thinking aloud the idea, I'm going to put this on Poison Ivy. Or I may put this on Swamp Thing. I'm going to put this on a figure where I think it looks a little bit more like vines than it does electricity. I appreciate Mattel for thinking outside the box, for giving something a little bit extra for Jessica Cruz, because for the most part, the figure I feel is just a little on the bland side. I think maybe I'm being a little harsh on the figure by already comparing it to another company, which I already personally feel does a better job when it comes to figure releases. You can't really look at one to compare to the other. You really have to stick to the material in front of you. Okay, so again, no more put downs. The figure itself is nicely painted. It's nice and clean. I don't really have any quality issues when it comes to the paint application here applied to Jessica. The face sculpt is good. She has a little bit of a smirk that can go a long way. And everything really about the figure comes together nicely. It's just, I can't help but look at the figure and feel like it's not a figure I would have picked up had I not been building Clayface. Clayface for me is the reasoning why I would have picked up Jessica Cruz. It may be, for that matter, the reason why I picked up a couple of these figures. But I think for the merits of wanting to get this particular figure, especially if you had the Green Lantern core building in your collection, I think she's a nice addition, but I don't think she's necessarily a figure that you would have to go out of your way to pick up unless you were looking to build the components for Clayface. Just my opinion, and take that with a grain of salt. Today, though, we were having a look at the DC Multiverse. This was the Collect and Connect Clayface wave. And today we're having a look at Green Lantern member Jessica Cruz. With all this vines everywhere. Everywhere you look, there's vines. Vines, vines, and more vines. Still got 2 figure reviews coming your way, guys. And then, of course, we're going to have a look at a finished Clayface, which I'm super excited for. Can't wait for that guy to be finished. And if you haven't had a chance to hit that little subscribe button down below, make sure you do so, as many more videos will be coming your way. Thanks for watching, as you always do. I'll see you guys next time.